Well, it's a pretty cool morning. Other than at 6 o'clock, the electricity went out at my house. I don't know if it's back on yet, but that was fun. But it's great seeing the families and the pictures and just seeing the growth numerically through having babies here in the church. And listen, I want to tell you something. Next Sunday and then the next Sunday, we're going to make two pretty big announcements in the life of the church. One has been about 14 years in the making, and I'm super excited to be able to share that with you next Sunday. The following Sunday, we're going to be talking about some big picture ministry things that are going to carry us into the future, doubling down on really our mission as a church. So want to invite you all back. I know it's going to be holiday weekend next weekend, but it's going to be a pretty cool Sunday. Also going to be Family Sunday, so we're going to have a lot of our youngsters here in the worship service as well. So back in, it was actually the last day in October, Tara and I went on vacation. And typically we're one of those that we take little incremental trips along the way, but because of there's various things, a lot to do with dealing with family sort of stuff and going to see family. We hadn't gone on vacation for a while, so it was very needed for us just to get away from the normal grind and just really kind of connect with one another. And I'm going to tell you how we travel and how it works in our marriage is we decide where we're going to go, kind of set the destination, and then Tara hands off things to me. So I make all the reservations, hotels, rental cars, flights, depending on where we're going. And I will tell you that when it comes to all that stuff, I want to win. I start making reservations early, and if I can get cheaper rates and different things like that, I will do that. I am also responsible for researching where to eat wherever it is that we go. And that's kind of my thing. And like this last trip, we went to Orlando, saw Mickey for a couple days, but we just had a lot of days where we didn't do anything. And so I started early, and I started an Apple Note, and I listed all the different categories, like close to our hotel, at the Disney property, all the different places. And I just started researching different restaurants, and I put websites in there and menus and different things like that. Tara and I sat down. She's like, I like that one, I like that one, I like that one. And so she just said, don't care. You just tell me where we're going to eat every day. And I'm going to tell you, we had some really good meals. There was a few that were kind of meh, but there were some really good meals. In fact, one of the places that we went, I'm not going to describe the entire thing. It was called the Edison, so it had kind of this industrial vibe to it. And food was great. Service was wonderful. I looked at my watch when all was said and done, and we had been in the restaurant for an hour and 45 minutes. Just great, wonderful. We were able to unwind, and I was near the end of the trip, so we were able to talk about, well, this was our favorite, and this was our favorite. But there was one place that we went that was absolutely out of this world, like amazing, out of this world. It was called Toothsome's Chocolate Emporium. And so it sounds exactly like the name. Pretty cool. In fact, it had like this steampunk sort of vibe to it, and they were playing like great music and different things, but there was a lot of chocolate in their menu. And actually, we started out with this chocolate almond bread that they brought out really hot, and it had salted caramel butter and yeah, it was like dessert first, kind of sort of thing. Tara, because they served brunch all day, she had a quiche, had like this glob of melted cheese on top of it. She said it's the best quiche she's ever had. I had a burger, and this is not going to surprise some of you who know me. The burger's name is May Contain Bacon. Guess what? had bacon cheddar cheese, and then on top of that was bacon, and on top of that was a thick hunk of pork belly, and it had a bacon jam with kind of the base was actually chocolate, and it doesn't sound like it would be good, but it was really good. And then they had a lot of these like fancy shakes, and Tara loves red velvet cake, so if you ever want to get her a cake, that's the kind that you would want to get her. They had a red velvet milkshake, and it had all the gooey stuff on top and a red velvet cupcake, and it was just way too much, but absolutely was our favorite place to eat. And I could go on and on and on about other places that we ate. In fact, remarkably, you might not be surprised when I say I love food. Anybody in here love food? Like, we love food. In fact, this week is Thanksgiving, and I'm already plotting out my course as far as what's going to be on the plate, what we're going to cook, different things. And I actually heard Jim Gaffigan say this. He said that Thanksgiving is officially overeating week in the United States of America. Now, I love food. And I love to talk about food, and I love to make food, and I love to eat food. But then I'm reminded of a verse from the book of Philippians that says this in Philippians chapter 3, verse 19, their end is destruction. Their God is their belly, and they glory in their shame, with minds set on earthly things. And now there's a lot in this verse right here, but I want to connect into two of the four phrases. Their God is their belly, with minds set on earthly things. Now, I'm not bashing food here by any means today, but I do want to throw something out here. And it's that idolatry can manifest itself in many ways. And we're going to actually talk about a big story in the book of Exodus that focuses in on idolatry and the role that it played in the collective narrative of the Jewish people. But before we get into that particular narrative here, I want to kind of back up and remember what Jim spoke about last week. He mentioned about the 70 elders of Israel and Moses and Aaron being able to connect with God, to share a meal with God. And what Jim brought up was the idea of shalom, the idea of peace, which really is pointing to this wholeness and contentment. And the best way for me to say it is you reach that place where there's like a sigh and say, yeah, this right here, this is it. This is what life is meant to be. And that was in the presence of God. Now, after that was over, Moses climbed back up to Mount Sinai to meet with God for 40 days and 40 nights, leaving his brother Aaron in charge. Now, while he is on the mountain, and Joshua being at the base of the mountain, he connects with God, and God gives him instructions for the building of the temple, or the tabernacle. The tabernacle was the mobile worship center. As they journeyed through the desert, they would set up the tabernacle, and that's where people would go to sacrifice, and it was called the tent of meeting. And so God explains all the dimensions and the colors and the details of the tabernacle and the curtains and the entrance, and the courtyard, and the altar, and the lamp, and the lampstands, and the Ark of the Covenant, and even the clothing that a priest was to wear when they would go to sacrifice in the tabernacle, even down to the detail of, hey, these people right here are the craftsmen that are going to do all of the construction and lead that part of things. And I want to remind us that we're talking about this idea of becoming a people, and God is taking a people that kind of didn't have a lot of structure, and they didn't have a lot of details of how things were supposed to go. And So in this part of Exodus, like God lays down the Ten Commandments, kind of give them a baseline of everything that they are supposed to do and how they're to operate. And then he talked about how to treat people, how to treat time with the Sabbath, and actually gave them groups of days, 3 different feasts and festivals that were like major in the idea of worship. And then now he's like, this is what worship looks like. He's giving them a baseline of how to worship God. And so while he's explaining what worship should look like to Moses, while Moses is on the mountain, you got the people that are growing a little restless down at the base of the mountain. And so what we find in Exodus chapter 32 is the people growing restless. And so what I'd like to do today is look at Exodus chapter 32, first of all, verses 1 through 6. And with that, I'm going to make a couple of observations about idolatry here in just a few seconds. It says, when the people saw how long it was taking Moses to come back down the mountain, they gathered around Aaron. Come on, they said. Make us some gods who can lead us. We don't know what happened to this fellow Moses who brought us here from the land of Egypt. So Aaron said, take the gold rings from the ears of your wives and sons and daughters and bring them to me. All the people took the gold rings from their ears and brought them to Aaron. Then Aaron took the gold and melted it down and molded it into the shape of a calf. When the people saw it, they exclaimed, O Israel, these are your gods who brought you out of the land of Egypt. And Aaron saw how excited the people were, so he built an altar in front of the calf. Then he announced, tomorrow will be a festival to the Lord. The people got up early the next morning to sacrifice burnt offerings and peace offerings. After this, they celebrated with feasting and drinking, gluttony and drunkenness, and they indulged in pagan revelry. So I want to stop here and bring out a couple of items that was true then, also true now. It was true 3,500 years ago. It's true even to this day. One is this: we are impatient with God. Anybody? Anybody ever get bothered by the timing of God? Like God is taking too long. And so Moses is up on the mountain. They're, just actually about a quarter or a third of the year removed from exiting Egypt. Excuse me. And they get impatient. They get impatient with God. Like, come on, what is taking God so long? And anybody been there? Okay, so I think we have all been there, but they also quickly forget the goodness of God. Like, make us gods. And then when Aaron made them a god, a golden calf, some suggest that he was trying to personify the God who brought them out of Egypt. But the reality is they quickly forgot all the things that God had done, and then they exclaimed, these are the gods. These are the gods who brought us up out of Egypt. Now, also, we accept cheap imitation idols in search of contentment and holiness and wholeness. Now, remember I talked about the idea of peace, of shalom, and it's like we are constantly looking for something to fill a void in our lives, and they were willing to really kind of forsake God and go after something else. Now, with that, one of the things that we read is that they were eating, drinking, and taking part in pagan revelry. With that, replacement gods lead to ungodliness. When you seek wholeness and fulfillment in things that are not God, it will lead to ungodly behavior. Now, one of the items I want to share here today, I will bring this up here in just a few moments, kind of a big picture sort of thing. It's this right here. Idolatry will be a constant temptation. Idolatry will be a constant temptation in our lives. And so true then, true now, we will be tempted toward idolatry even when we don't realize that, we have no earthly idea that we are being tempted by idolatry. I think our idols today are a little bit more stealthy than the idols 3,500 years ago. But there's something here that happens, and we're going to kind of let this unfold over the remainder of our time here today. There's a picture of two different leaders. There's a picture of two ways that we can respond to idolatry in our lives, and we find that in the person of Aaron and the person of Moses. And we see two completely polar opposite ways that idolatry is addressed in people's lives. And one of the things that we begin to see and have already seen is Aaron sought to please the people over pleasing God. The people are like, Aaron, what's up? We don't know what happened to this fellow Moses. So make us gods that we can worship, that we can, this is where we're going to find our fulfillment. And I think Aaron cared more about what people thought about him than what God thought about him. I mean, he had every opportunity to address their impatience. He had every opportunity to call out sin. He had every opportunity to rise to the occasion as a leader. Instead, he said, bring me your gold. Bring me your gold. And so let me ask this question, because I think this could kind of help us evaluate our lives. Are we more concerned about what people think about us than we are about what God thinks about us? I mean, that kind of gets to the core a little bit. But here's one of the things that we find as we read on, is we begin to see a little bit about Moses. We're going to pick up in verse 7 and read through verse 11. It says, the Lord told Moses, quick, go down the mountain, your people. Now, God's like, these are your people, Moses. Your people, whom you brought from the land of Egypt, have corrupted themselves. How quickly they have turned from the way I commanded them to live. They have melted down gold and made a gold calf, and they have bowed down and sacrificed to it. They are saying, these are your gods, O Israel, who brought you out of the land of Egypt. Then the Lord said, I have seen how stubborn and rebellious these people are. Now leave me alone so my fierce anger can blaze against them, and I will destroy them. Then I will make you, Moses, into a great nation. Now, this is a temptation on Moses' part. Like, hey, I get to be like it here. But Moses tried to pacify the Lord his God. O Lord, he said, why are you so angry with your own people whom you brought out of the land of Egypt with such great power and such a strong hand? Now, I don't know if God was like playing Moses or like guiding Moses here. And that he was really serious about, like, hey, I'm going to destroy these people. Or if he, was he serious, or was he trying to get Moses to realize something in the process? Kind of on the fence on whether God was actually wanting to smite them, or he was actually working in Moses' life. But notice Moses does something here. He speaks on behalf of God's people. He speaks on behalf of God's people, and we're going to see this even more. But he's like, are you really going to do this? Because remember what you did. You brought them up out of Egypt. In fact, in verses 12 through 14, we see this. It says here, I'm trying to find verse 12 in my Bible, why let the Egyptians say their God rescued them with the evil intention of slaughtering them in the mountain, wiping them from the face of the earth. Turn away from your fierce anger. Change your mind about this terrible disaster you have threatened against the people. Remember your servants, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. You bound yourself with an oath to them, saying, I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars of heaven, and I will give you all the land that I have promised to your descendants, and they will possess it forever. So the Lord changed his mind about the terrible disaster he had threatened to bring on his people. Here's one of the things. I see Moses fighting for the people, but he spends more time fighting for the honor and glory and name of God. He is fighting for God's honor. He is fighting for God's name. And again, is God leading Moses to that place where he is needing Moses to come to the realization of how great God is? But he speaks about his name. He speaks about his fame. And Aaron sought to elevate himself. Aaron was concerned about Aaron's name and Aaron's fame. God laid it out as a possibility for Moses to elevate himself, but instead, he chose to elevate God. He chose to be about the name of God and the cause of God. And so, which caused me to pause just a little bit, reflect in my life, and really ask the question, do I care more about my name and fame than I do about the name and fame of Jesus? So let me ask you here today, do you care more about your name and fame, or do you care about the name and fame of Jesus? So Moses descends from the mountain carrying stone tablets that God had written on himself. And as he approaches the camp, they hear the noise. Joshua actually says, sounds like war. Joshua was a fighting man. And Moses said, no, it sounds more like a sinful celebration. And so we skip on down to verses 19 and 20. And it says, when he came near the camp, Moses saw the calf and the dancing, and he burned with anger. He threw the stone tablets to the ground, smashing them at the foot of the mountain. He took the calf and they had made and burned it. Then he ground it into powder, threw it into the water, and forced the people to drink it. Now, Moses got to see what God had already seen. And when he saw what God had seen, he burned with anger. He got to see firsthand the gluttony and the drunkenness and probably the immorality that was happening as a result of their idolatrous actions. And so I don't know. In fact, most scholars are kind of shrugging their shoulders. Why did he grind the calf I could burn it and grind it into dust, throw the dust in the water, and make the people drink it? I think in many ways he was like you did this, you're going to take this sin upon yourself. You're going to drink your own judgment and sin. But as we see this here, one thing that I will say is that Moses was angry about the right things. And I'm going to stretch some of us here today. Now, I'm going to say this. There's two passages in Scripture that we point to when it comes to anger. In your wrath, do not sin. Okay? There is another verse that says, man's righteousness does not bring about the righteous. Man's anger does not bring about the righteousness of God. And so I'm going to say it's hard for me to be angry in a righteous way. It really is. It's hard for me to be angry and not sin. I will also tell you that too many times I'm angry about the wrong things. I'm not angry at the things that make God angry. And so Moses' anger was paralleled with God's anger. And so in verse 21, though, we read this. Finally, he turned to Aaron and he demanded, "What did these people do to you to make you bring such terrible sin upon them?" And so what we find is he's giving Aaron, here's your out, dude. Here's your opportunity to own what you need to own here. But this is what Aaron says in verses 22 and 23. Don't get so upset, my lord. Aaron replied. You yourself know how evil these people are. They said to me, "Make us gods who will lead us." We don't know what happened to this fellow Moses, who brought us here from the land of Egypt. So he throws the people under the bus, and then he throws Moses under the bus. Like, not my fault. It's the people's fault. You know how bad they are. You know how horrible they are. And by the way, I wasn't the guy up on the mountain. I wasn't the guy up on the mountain taking so long. But I don't love it, actually just kind of ticks me off, the way Aaron responds in verse 24. So I told them, "Whoever has gold jewelry, take it off." When they brought it to me, I simply threw it in the fire, and out came this calf. In the history of excuses and explanations, this might be the worst. I remember my brother graduated high school with a guy that went deer hunting and ended up shooting a cow. Now, where I'm from, we have a lot of Herefords, and Herefords notoriously have white faces. And he said, "I just thought it was a white-faced deer." Never seen a white-faced deer before. That's a pretty bad explanation. Aaron's is worse. I threw the gold in the fire. Oh, poof, out comes this calf. Aaron avoids all responsibility. And when Moses saw that the people were out of control, he actually called for those who were loyal to God to come. And Moses actually said, "Take action to restore order," and that ended in the lives of 3,000 different people. But what we find, interestingly, in verses 30 through 32 is something that in many ways points to the gospel. And it points to the gospel in a pretty cool way. It says, "The next day Moses said to the people, 'You have committed terrible sin, but I will go back up to the Lord on the mountain. Perhaps I will be able to obtain forgiveness for your sin.' So Moses returned to the Lord and said, 'Oh, what a terrible sin these people have committed. They have made gods of gold for themselves.'" But notice verse 32. "But now if you will only forgive their sin, but if not, erase my name from the record you have written." Moses cares for these people, cares so much for these people. He said, "Listen, maybe you could forgive them, and if not, maybe in exchange, you can blot my name out so that they might be forgiven." Now, God doesn't bite here, but we understand that we understand that the blessing, the worldwide blessing that he sought to bring through the lineage of Abraham is Jesus, who will stand in place, who will offer his life for our sin. But one of the things that I appreciate here is that while God does cause some punishment for sin, he's not completely done with his people. That he still says, like in chapter 33, we're going to move forward. We're going to change how we've done things, but we're going to move forward, and we're going to go take the land that I have told you that we are going to take. But I do think that we do see this common temptation that all of us have, that idolatry will be a constant in our lives. But what we do see is two different paths that we can take. And our bottom line here for today is this: Aaron's path is compromise that leads to destruction, while Moses' path shows faithfulness to God. Two different paths. Two different responses when life doesn't necessarily go as planned. When we become impatient with God, when that temptation to chase after things that will not suffice over and over and over again. And as we talk about our walk with Jesus, one of the things that I can say is this will be a constant battle. It will be a constant battle for us to deal with idolatry. And I'm going to say it's going to be a constant battle daily. And I'll even go as far as to say multiple times each day we are going to be confronted with idolatry. But I remind you that our idolatry is going to be more stealthy than the idolatry of 3,500 years ago, but it is still nonetheless idolatry. So here's what I'd like for us to do as we think about head, heart, hands here today. I'm going to say this with your head, with your mind here today. Name your idols. What are your idols? What are the things that you're chasing after? Now I'm going to ask some questions, and these questions are meant to meddle into your life just a little bit. I remember many years ago where there's a preacher by the name of Chuck Swindoll. Anybody remember Chuck Swindoll? Chuck Swindoll said, if you want to know your idols in life, look at your bank statement. That you might be able to understand what those idols are, what those things that you're chasing after, what that is. So I want to kind of put this into maybe 21st century digital age sort of questions. What ads are you getting on social media? What are those things that are popping up that say you might like? Because it's an algorithm. And it's an algorithm based on past algorithms. Of saying like this is who you are. Or what about your browsing history? What does it tell you about yourself, what your idols are? Now this one really meant to be uncomfortable. What does your Amazon account say about your idols? What does it tell you about you? What does it tell you about what your priorities really, really are? What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts when you have nothing to think about? What are you thinking about when there's that time where like it's just kind of there and there's nothing to think about? Where does your mind go? What gets your anxiety? What kind of irks you just a little bit? What about addictions? What about 401k? What about marriage and family? Not saying it's a bad thing, but can we place that before God? What about your political party? Do you know what's been called the number one religion in America today? Is our political system. Guys, what about your guns? So idolatry is going to look different, but it is still idolatry. Also going to share this and lay this out. I think we need to embrace Jesus' teaching on idolatry. In fact, this is what it says in Matthew chapter 6, verse 24. No one can serve two masters, for you will hate one and love the other. You'll be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and be enslaved to money. I mean, Jesus speaks to heart issues here. He speaks to patterns and motivations and One of the motivations in life is money. In fact, I think about what John Rockefeller said when he was asked how much money is enough, when he said, $1 more. Anybody? If I just had, does that ever enter into your mind? I mean, Jesus brought up like 2 items just right after this. He's like, what about clothes? What about food? How much of your mind goes to food and clothes? Like, really? I mean, I outed myself on that one just a few moments ago. Jesus said these 2 things dominate people's thoughts. And so we need to wrestle with this and understand that there are some patterns in life that may reveal to us what our idols are. And finally, hey, this week is Thanksgiving. And so I'm just going to share this. Be thankful. And when I say be thankful, here's one of the things I want to share. If you are not thankful for what you have already, you'll be constantly chasing after that, which in your mind and your heart you think, this, if I can just get this one more thing, or these 2 more things, or these 3 more things, then I will be content. Then I will be happy. But there is something amazing that when we begin to see what we already have, the blessings that God has already given us, we become content in that. That has a way to counter the temptation of idolatry in our lives. We join me in prayer. Father, thank you for today. Lord, I thank you for the gift of life, and Lord, I thank you that we manage it well. And as we do, Father, I pray that we are not content with cheap imitations, that we truly seek Jesus. And we seek Jesus not to get heaven, but to get you. Thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.